Hello and welcome. You are watching UATV News with me, Ksenia Buhai. Let's start with the latest developments. An authoritarian regime is impossible in Ukraine because our country has a strong civil society. This was stated by President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelenskyy during his speech at Stanford University on the third day of his walking trip to the United States. The head of state visited California. He met with leading American and Ukrainian entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley and also had talks with Apple chief executive Tim Cook. Watch more details in the following report.
Nothing is impossible for Ukraine. This is not only the personal credo, but also a symbol of modern Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy believes. He stated this at Stanford University in California, addressing an expert environment, students, teachers and other guests.
What words describe Ukraine? Everything is possible. Outstanding people, famous politicians, businessmen, figures from all over the world stood here at Stanford University. How could I, once an ordinary guy from a simple family, from a beautiful, industrial city in eastern Ukraine, imagine that I would stay here? I couldn't, but anything is possible. For this, it was at least necessary to become the president of Ukraine.
President believes that Ukraine will grow as a powerful and successful country taking leading positions in Europe.
We have a Ukrainian dream. It is not only about digitalization. We are turning our people back. This is extremely important for us to return the Crimea and Donbas. We will become a powerful, firm and successful country, leader of Europe.
Ukraine is the first country in the world to officially implement a digital ID card. Hundreds of public services will soon be available online, President stated.
Digitalization.
One of the top priority reforms in Ukraine is digitalization, and it runs triumphantly, swift and robust. And I'm convinced that the main achievement of this reform is the victory over corruption on several levels in the country.
Finishing the official part, Volodymyr Zelenskyy talked with students, teachers and visitors of Stanford University. Topics were ranging. The head of state stressed that an authoritarian regime never sustains itself in Ukraine due to the strong civil society.
There is a famous writer, Evgeny Schwartz, who made a famous fairy tale called Kill the Dragon. You remember that everyone who is too long or like at some time at the power will sooner or later become a dragon. And in this fairy tale, the young boy who killed the dragon with all the great ideas eventually became dragon himself. Do you feel yourself becoming a dragon? And do you do anything to keep humility and kindness in your heart, not to become a dragon?
Talking about dragons, I have served as a president of Ukraine for 2 years. While the situation with your acquaintances looks a little bit more problematic, however, this is a domestic choice of your country. And as for Ukraine, whatever someone would like it to be or would think about it, the Ukrainian civil society is that much strong, free and democratic, and our history suggests relevant examples, so that a dragon could never happen in Ukraine. Otherwise, they cut its wings.
During his visit to California, Volodymyr Zelenskyy also met with Apple CEO Tim Cook at the company's quarters.
Glad to meet Tim Cook, who runs a company that inspires all supporters of digitization around the world. Ukraine is already a global IT hub. We are interested in expanding Apple's presence in Ukraine and implementing new ambitious joint projects.
The president and his team presented the project of a Dia City platform to Apple's CEO. They also discussed the project of population census in Ukraine, which the company has already successfully implemented in the United States. Reported by Nick Starkov, Alexandra Khutnik, UATV News.
The policy of American President Joe Biden on military assistance to Ukraine will not change. This was stated by Andrew Mark, freelance advisor to the President of Ukraine. He told this in an exclusive interview with our TV channel. Andrew Mark noted that the whole world was closely following this situation in Afghanistan. Many were worried by the statement of the head of the White House that the U.S. policy towards some countries will change. However, this does not apply to Ukraine.
По-перше, це не може статися у
Firstly, this cannot concern Ukraine because in principle there is no American military in Ukraine. They don't fight. Ukraine is waging this war itself and will fight this war to the end, we know exactly. It is capable of defending itself even if the enemy is powerful, and Ukraine is not even asking America to participate. The maximum, it asks for more support. Ukrainian army is very strong. Ukraine receives very little aid from the United States compared to Afghanistan or other countries.
The United States government assistance to Ukraine aims to support strengthening the national economy and provision of aid to residents of Donbas affected by the situation in eastern Ukraine. This was stated by the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State George Kent in an exclusive interview with our TV channel. Allocation of additional $45 million was agreed by Presidents of Ukraine and the United States. Humanitarian aid is required for 3,400,000 people affected by the hostilities in eastern Ukraine. In addition, the United States is providing assistance in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic.
Given 2.2 million vaccines to Ukraine and also a total of COVID assistance of 55 million. In addition to the humanitarian assistance, much of our democracy and governance programming and our economic growth programming is focused on Ukraine's east. And that was an intentional decision several years ago because we want to strengthen Ukrainian institutions, strengthen the Ukrainian economy, and understand there are needs that are quite great in Ukraine's east, and that can also include residents of Donbas that have had to leave their homes because of conflict.
Russia undermines the Minsk agreements and wants to aggravate the situation in Donbas. This is how the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry commented on Russia's refusal to extend the mandate of the OSCE mission at the entry-exit checkpoints Hukovo and Donetsk on the temporary uncontrolled part of the border in Donbas. This means that Russia is going to continue supplying weapons, ammunition and troops to uncontrolled territories, which could lead to escalation. To remind, the OSCE mandate expires on September 30th.
Забезпечення прозорості на
Ensuring transparency on the Ukrainian-Russian border is an essential prerequisite for resolving the armed conflict. Ukraine demands from the Russian Federation to stop destructive actions against the OSCE monitoring mission immediately, to fulfill all the commitments undertaken under the Minsk agreements in order to de-escalate the security situation and further resolve the armed conflict.
The so-called authorities of the occupied Crimea refused to provide Ukraine with cases of life sentence prisoners for their review. This was stated by Ukraine's Parliamentary Commissioner for Human Rights, Lyudmila Denisova. She met with head of the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine, Matilda Bogner. They discussed the humanization of national legislation for people serving life sentences. Currently, there are 1,536 prisoners serving life sentences in Ukraine. Among them is citizen C. He has been waiting for years for a revision of the verdict of the Court of Appeal of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, dated November 26, 2004. Due to newly discovered circumstances, the man's criminal case is in the temporarily occupied Crimea, and due to the absence of a norm in international treaties on the transfer of cases, the Russian Federation refuses to provide it to Ukraine. The number of daily cases of COVID-19 has slightly grown in Ukraine. 2,693 were recorded over the past day. The Health Ministry reports 45 people died. More than 800 were hospitalized. The most cases are confirmed in Kyiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, Lviv and Odessa regions. The Ministry of Health emphasizes that vaccination is the most effective means of protection against COVID-19. Face masks and social distancing are of great importance as well. More than 120 apartments will be allocated to civil servants who have moved to the city of Kramatorsk from temporarily occupied territories of Donetsk and Luhansk regions. The construction of service housing has already begun. Apartments will be given to officials for temporary use. The apartments will all be furnished. All communications will be available as well. The regional administration is going to allocate almost $7,500 from the budget to erect a 10-story apartment building.
Ті темпи, які ми бачимо, щоб
The temp you see means that the construction will be completed by 2023. 121 apartments must be equipped with everything needed. A person must enter the service housing and be able to live there.
2 cities of the Donetsk region of Ukraine were included into the top 10 list of most competitive cities of the country. This rating is annually prepared by USAID. Among the criteria are the transparency of paperwork for entrepreneurs, support for private entrepreneurs, the introduction of innovations. Last year, Khmelnytsky city in central Ukraine became the best regional center for doing business. More details on the current rating in the following report.
Despite being close to the contact line, 2 cities of the Donetsk region, Bakhmut and Mariupol, entered the list of top 45 most competitive cities of Ukraine. They are in the 5th and the 8th places.
місцеві органи
Local government bodies focus their policy, their activities to get rid of the barriers to access the market. When the new business is opened, it doesn't need 2 months to open, but it opens within a few days to make the business the most effective and receive understandable access to government resources.
The conditions for the development of local businesses were rated according to the 10 criteria. Among them are data transparency, support of innovations by local authorities, level of local corruption, and resources for project implementation. The experts interviewed entrepreneurs and analyzed the activities of local officials.
В динаміці
We have seen an improvement in such an indicator at the safety of doing business on average in the country and deterioration in such an indicator at the cost of compliance with legislation. It has become more expensive. The average business registration time is about 6.5 days this year.
The rating is useful for local officials. After all, leaders of the list attract new investors. And those who are outsiders this year know what they work on for the next.
The index for the city of Zhytomyr also helped in the fact that we attracted a large American investor who will offer the construction of a plant in Zhytomyr this year. In general, this year we attracted about 4 large enterprises, and this is a total of $220 million in investments.
Khmelnytsky became the leader of the rating of cities. It topped the list of the best regional centers for doing business for the 2nd year in a row. In general, researchers assess the development of business in Ukraine positively because 45% of the entrepreneurs interviewed plan to expand their business in the coming years. Reported by Nick Starkov, Larissa Zubenko, UATV News.
That was our final story this week. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. More updates on our official website, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter pages.